Most people in their 20s can't save a few $1,000, let alone invest it. And I'm not saying that from way up high because I was exactly that person. I didn't grow up around money. I didn't walk out of school into some fat salary. And when I actually started trying to invest, I had almost no clue what I was doing, embarrassingly little. But over about 5 years, I went from basically zero to a six-figure portfolio somewhere in my mid-20s. And I want to be straight with you because this is the spot where these videos usually lie to you. It wasn't luck. It wasn't some genius stock pick. It came down to a few boring decisions made early, sticking with them when it was discouraging as hell. And mostly just not falling into the traps that quietly keep everyone else broke. So let me actually walk you through how it happened, mistakes and all. Because the mistakes are the useful part. And while you're here, drop a comment. How much are you investing a month right now? 20 bucks, 50, nothing yet? No judgment. I started at basically nothing too. I'm just curious. So here's my real starting point, and it is not flattering. I started right around that big market crash a few years back, when everything fell off a cliff and half the market was suddenly on sale. A 21-year-old's dream entry point, honestly. And what did I do with it? I gambled. I got into options trading, which long-term is one of the most reliable ways I know of to hand your money to somebody smarter than you. I told myself it was investing. It was a casino with a nicer interface. That lasted a month or two before I came to my senses. So then I overcorrected straight into the next mistake. I went chasing high-yield dividend stocks because I love the idea of cash just flowing in. And a lot of what I bought was too good to be true. Stuff promising these huge yearly payouts, and I'd buy in thinking free money. Then watch the share price quietly bleed out underneath me. A bunch of those companies were just garbage I had no business owning. The yield was high because the company was sinking. I learned that one the hard way too. The real turning point came a few months in, when I looked at my account, honestly, and felt something painful click. The market had ripped upward, tons of solid companies had bounced back hard, and I had made almost nothing. Almost everything sitting in there was just money I'd deposited. My actual gains were a rounding error. I'd been busy and active and clever and gone basically nowhere. So I scrapped the whole thing and went simple. What I landed on and mostly stuck with was about as boring as it gets. Broad index funds, the kind of thing where you're buying a slice of hundreds of the biggest companies at once instead of trying to outsmart the room. I kept a bit of a dividend growth tilt for a while because I liked it, but the core became boring and broad on purpose. And I'll be honest about why I eventually leaned even harder into the plain index stuff. I noticed I was quietly underperforming the market. There's almost nothing more deflating than watching the whole market go up, say 20-something% in a year while your clever little portfolio does 18. That gap sounds tiny. Over decades, on a big balance, that gap is a house. So I stopped trying to beat it and just bought the boring thing. I'm not your advisor. That's just the move that finally worked after I'd tried all the exciting versions first. But here's the part I actually need you to hear, because the strategy was maybe a third of it. The habits were the rest. And the first one is the thing this whole channel keeps circling back to. I lived well below my means. For years, I drove an ancient, paid-off, slightly embarrassing car. No payment, ran fine, did not care what anyone thought, no designer, anything. And for one stretch, while I was saving hard toward a specific goal, I took it to a genuinely silly extreme. I'm talking a tiny one-bedroom with almost no furniture in it. A bed, somewhere to put my clothes, a desk, no couch, no TV. The living room was just empty because all I did was work, eat at the desk, play games, sleep. I am not telling you to live like that. It's not healthy long-term, and I didn't keep it up. But for a defined window with a clear goal, that is what got me there. I just refused to spend on a couch when that money could be out working for me. Second habit, I actually tracked what came in and what went out. Not obsessively, not every coffee logged in some spreadsheet. Just enough that nothing about my own money was a mystery to me. You would be amazed how many people genuinely have no idea where their money goes. And you cannot make good decisions inside a fog. And third, I stayed away from the obvious debt traps. No spiraling credit card balance, no dumb loans for stuff I couldn't afford. I just lived inside what I made and stacked the difference. Not exciting, extremely effective. And I want to kill the biggest excuse right now. Because I lived the proof of it. It does not matter how much you start with. When I began, I was throwing in 25, 50, maybe 75 bucks at a time. Tiny. Almost pointless on paper. But the amount was never the point, the habit was. Because here's what actually happens. As I slowly earned more, I made a deliberate choice to keep my expenses roughly flat instead of letting them balloon, and every extra dollar of income just went onto the pile. Small amounts early, bigger amounts as the income grew, all riding on the same one automatic habit. Now, let me show you the most discouraging and most important pattern in the whole thing, because nobody warns you about it. The early progress is brutally slow. Getting from nothing to the first real chunk took me ages. At one point, my portfolio sat dead flat for over a year. 12 plus months where I kept dumping money in and had almost nothing to show for it because the market was just doing its thing and my balance barely moved. That is the exact stretch where most people quit. They go, this isn't working, and bail right before it starts working, because then it flips. The increments start coming faster and faster. The jump that took me a couple of years early on later started happening in months, then weeks. Going from 0 to that 6-figure mark took me about 5 years. Pushing the next big chunk past it took a tiny fraction of that. And yeah, partly that's because I was investing more by then. But that's the whole point. The snowball is slow, and then suddenly it isn't. And then the mindset that ties it all together. Stop panicking when the market drops. I had multiple stretches where things fell, and I just kept buying because a drop isn't a disaster, it's a sale. And this is the part that honestly baffles me about people. The same person who will sprint across town to buy a jacket because it's 30% off will completely lose their mind when the market drops 30% and sell everything in a panic. It is the same event. One version you're celebrating a discount, the other you're running from one. If you can just hold the simple idea that this thing has trended up over the long run for a century, then a crash is you buying something valuable for cheaper. Time in the market beats trying to time the market, basically always. Almost nobody times it right, especially the people selling you a course on how to. But here's the catch with all that: a dip is just a sale talk, the part people skip right over. You can only actually think that way if you genuinely believe in what you're holding. If you don't, the first real drop will shake you out, because deep down you were never convinced in the first place. Let me give you the honest example from my own account. A big chunk of what I started buying was a tech-heavy index fund, QQQ. And yeah, there were plenty of stretches where it dropped, sometimes hard. I never once saw those drops as a bad thing. To me, they were almost a gift because it meant I got to buy the exact thing I already wanted at a discount. But I could only feel that way because I actually believed in what I owned. And let's just be honest with ourselves about the era we're living in. This is the age of technology, of AI now, and space sitting right behind it. Betting against all of that over the long run just seems genuinely absurd to me. Nobody can promise you anything in markets, but the way I see it, this stuff is pointed up over a long enough timeline. So a dip was never a reason to panic. It was just the thing I believed in, briefly on sale. So if you're sitting there thinking it's too late for you, it isn't. The best time to start was years ago. The second best time is today. And that's not a cute little quote. It's just true. Start with 10 bucks, 25, whatever you've actually got. Build the habit first, watch it start to move, and there's a real chance you get a little hooked and start hunting for ways to earn more or trim more just so you can feed it faster. Just don't do the empty apartment thing forever. Get there with some discipline, but keep your actual life too. The entire point of doing any of this is freedom, not misery. That's the honest version of how it happened for me. So tell me down below, where are you in this right now? Just starting, stuck in the slow part, or further along than you thought you'd be. And if you went through your own gambling and garbage stocks phase like I did, I genuinely want to hear it. I'm in this with you.